Welcome to Binging the Force, a Star Wars rewatch podcast with the Rocky Mountain Fan Force. Tonight's episode, Star Wars Rebels, Season 3, Episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber. In this episode, Sabine begins her training with this ancient weapon that we've seen a little bit previously, and in doing so, she must face her past. But before we get into that too much, we've got a great panel of hosts tonight. We've got Jonathan over here.
Hello, I'm Jonathan.
We've got Michael.
And I'm Michael. You must be Eliza then.
And joining us for the first time is Jefferson.
Hello, Jefferson from Portland.
All right, very cool. Very interesting episode here. And then this episode, in my opinion, I think this is the best acting that Tia Sircar had as Sabine for the entire run, the whole 4 seasons of Rebels. Not really my favorite character. When I was first watching this series, I thought everything came too easy for that character. But then I did begin to appreciate the character more and more as the series went on and in further rewatches, I guess. So without spoiling anything, later on in the episode, Sabine really opens up to Kanan. They're dueling, and the music track for that scene, Kevin Kiner's track, is called Sabine's Catharsis. So it got me thinking about the word catharsis, with this being Mental Health Awareness Month. And I was thinking, do you consider Star Wars to be cathartic for you? Or is it more an escape to a galaxy far, far away from your regular everyday life? So that was my thought, my just little discussion question for tonight.
That's a deep thought there, Dale. That's a good question. So I been thinking about that, and for me, most of when I watch Star Wars, it's kind of dual, right? I watch Star Wars for escapism. I watch it for enjoyment. I watch it to share with my son, watch it to share with my wife and my friends, and to just kind of escape to that galaxy far, far away. But when it comes to catharsis, that kind of release of emotions, that time that you get when you can just take a breath after you've seen something. I think the last time that I had real catharsis when I watched Star Wars was like almost just the beginning of A Force Awakens. It had been so long since we had some Star Wars that like really meant a lot to me. Like, I enjoyed the prequels, but they weren't cathartic for me. But like seeing everything that was happening on the screen during Force Awakens, it's like, like this is the Star Wars that I love and appreciate, and that just really hit me in the feels, and it just released this like flood of hormones of just feeling good about Star Wars again.
Very cool. I like it. Michael, Jefferson, and any thoughts?
I mean, I'm going to echo, probably a common theme is going to be it's both. I mean, that, there's definitely the just get into it and just watch it and have fun aspect. And, I'd say Clone Wars is probably a lot more for that. And I'd say almost the prequels kind of, at least episode 2, for me is kind of more for that because, my favorite thing, Jedi action. And I still say episode 2 is the best for just all out Jedi action and just having a good time with that. But it also is cathartic. I would say, like, kind of building on what Jonathan said, I'm trying to think for myself personally where it would be cathartic. And I know it would be in terms of good versus evil, that kind of thing, in terms of those kind of feelings and feeling like making choices and choosing the good side, choosing the bad side. There's definitely resonances of that in your life in terms of a catharsis for what makes you feel change for yourself. Do you become a person who, is good, or do you become a person who chooses to not care as much about other people? And I would say that there is more of a ring of that in the middle trilogy, because you've got Luke's journey from innocence to choosing the good side, and then similarly in the sequel trilogy you've got Rey's similar innocence to choosing Palpatine or the light side of the Force. And I would say the distinction there with the prequel trilogy is you've got the opposite, because with the prequel trilogy, you've got the opposite journey. You've got Anakin's journey from innocence and ending up on the dark side. So I think from a catharsis standpoint, that would be a distinct difference in feel and tone between the trilogies.
Yeah.
That's the one trilogy where the catharsis is to end up on the wrong side of the Force.
Yeah, and I think catharsis kind of also can come when you identify with the character, you understand their struggles, and you're like, you know, I mean, they what they're going through, I can kind of metaphorically maybe see some of those things in your own life, right? So maybe there is some sort of struggle or some sort of evil that is a challenge in your own life, and it's like, you know, if I can see Luke overcoming and defeating evil and coming out on the other side with his family and you know, kind of starting fresh and completing that hero's journey, then maybe things in my life aren't so bad, and I can also kind of be inspired by his journey and make it part of my own life. I don't know if it happens for Sabine. I guess we'll see.
For me, I would put it somewhere in the middle. Like, it sounds like Michael and Jonathan feel the same. To me, Star Wars is the most important thing about it has always been the environment that it takes place in. It's like a town that I don't live in, but I love visiting. And sometimes I go for years without visiting, and sometimes I visit every week. And so I like just kind of being in the environment. And so it's not so much about the characters, because if you asked me who my favorite Star Wars character was, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But just the environment that all the stories take place in is so consistent and so fun to be in, even if it's just vicariously through a TV screen. So I don't know if that's a catharsis or not. Maybe it is, but that's the appeal of it for me, for sure. So escape, I wouldn't necessarily call it an escape, but maybe it is kind of that too. I don't know. I don't know that I'm escaping from anything in particular, but
Jefferson, I'm going to sidebar and ask you an off-topic question here. So you're talking about an environment that you can go to, and it kind of feels the same, and it feels comfortable sometimes, or at least when you sounds like when you like to be in, like to revisit, even, no matter how long it may have been, right? Do you feel like there's a difference in environments between like George Lucas Star Wars, prequel era Star Wars, Disney Star Wars, Disney era Star Wars, Clone Wars, and Rebels Star Wars? Are they all good environments for you to visit, or is one kind of more?
They are, and I feel like, you know, given how you just kind of rattled off how different they could be, I feel like it's a very consistent environment. I feel like there's enough that's always the same. You know, the appeal of the original movies was always that it really did feel like a real place. You know, stuff was dirty and it didn't work right. You know, the Millennium Falcon's always breaking down. And, you know, it wasn't like, you know, some other franchises where everything's just clean and more abstracted. But I do feel like it's all the same. I don't know that I mean, there's some series and movies that I enjoy more than others, that I enjoy rewatching more than others, but I feel like it's all the same thing. It's all more or less the same environment, just slightly different flavors. And I don't know that I could pick a favorite necessarily. I mean, it's frequently whichever one is in front of me at the moment.
Yeah.
And Dale, so how about you?
When you brought up Force Awakens, it made me think of that first teaser trailer when we hear the Snoke voiceover. There has been an awakening, because not only was there, you know, an awakening in universe in the story at that point, but honestly, with my me being a fan of the franchise, a fanatic, if you will, when Force Awakens, when they started promoting that, you know, it made me think back to when the prequels came out and when the special editions came out, where I would, you know, take in all this information and I would, you know, jump to all these conclusions and kind of structure things in my head. And then bam, I'd have this word vomit, and I would just love to share it with whoever the hell's interested, you know, Star Wars fans around me that wants to hear it. So, you know, discussing things like who's Snoke, who is BB-8, who is this girl on the desert planet, you know, that was really an awakening. So I even though I'm not exactly sure what fully catharsis always means. I feel like it is an accurate way for me to describe my being a fanatic for Star Wars, I guess.
The Force awakened, and so did Dale.
Yes.
And I just want to share real quick. So I was at Star Wars Celebration, and in the main theater when they premiered the Force Awakens trailer for the first time up on their huge screen, surrounded by their Star Wars fans, and like just I felt those were just such strong emotions. I felt seeing all that just wash over you. See Millennium Falcon flying and flipping upside down through the desert and stuff, right? And then at the end, Han Solo says, "Chewie, we're home." I mean, there were cathartic tears coming down my face. It's fantastic.
I'd agree.
Chewie, we're home.
Awesome.
We'll see if this episode makes us cry too.
All right, let's do it. Rebels.
All right. She's flying in.
So story picks up. We are at the Rebel base on Atollon, which there's no known like beings on this planet other than the Bendu. So it's a good place to hide out, I guess. Kind of like Ice Planet Hoth.
So this wasn't the next episode from the last one we watched, but it's like a continuation of them being on this base, right?
Exactly. So they're on a little bit more friendly terms with Fenn Rau here. He's not really a prisoner at this point.
Gotcha. So he's showing him the Darksaber here.
Yeah, I love his expression. He's just so shocked.
Okay,
Yeah, because this like means a lot to the
There are
Mandalorian.
subtitles from another thing, because is this the actual subtitles from this episode? I'm reading them.
I'm seeing looks like sort of trivia facts or commentary or something.
Like I clearly picked bad subtitles here to
Oh, is it director's commentary subtitles?
Interesting. Okay, well, let's just ignore those subtitles then. But this is cool.
That's
Let's actually talk about what we're seeing on screen here, which is that we're getting an animated within an animated. So we're getting a 2D animated sequence within a CGI animated show, showing us the birth of the Darksaber and the Darksaber in the hands of the first Mandalorian Jedi, and kind of stuff that had been said to us verbally, but now we actually saw it illustrated in a 2D black, imagery in a CGI show. So
I love it when they do that sort of thing. They did something similar in one of the Genndy Tartakovsky episodes of the Clone Wars.
I was just going to say, it reminds me, the look of that 2D animation looked like the Clone Wars micro series. So.
Yeah, I like that. It's a nice way to give you something to look at while they're spouting exposition at you.
Yeah.
Are we gonna do the Genndy Tartakovsky series at some point?
It's on the spreadsheet. It's on the big plan.
Okay.
And it's interesting too. So it looks like the Darksaber, when he was telling this story, was pulled out like Sword in the Stone, King Arthur kind of thing here. Is that just a general origin story for that thing?
And at some point we saw how it ended up in Sabine's hands, and now Sabine is grappling with the weight of the responsibility of having the sword means she could lead Mandalore, and she absolutely has zero interest in leading Mandalore. That's not what she wants with her life, but she's got her Mandalorian mentor on one side, her somewhat of a Jedi mentor on the other side. So we've got a similar parallel dynamic here to what we had in the last episode we were watching, where Ezra kind of had Maul on one side and the Jedi on the other side. And so we keep having these dualities of who do you listen to, who do you respect as a mentor, although in this case I guess Hera counts too. So she's got Hera and his name is leaving my brain right now, the Jedi. Kanan, thank you. Yep. So you've got Hera and Kanan. You've got the Mandalorian here, the older one. So she's got all these influences here, and who does she become?
Yeah.
And remind me, at this point, have they established that she can't just give it away? She's stuck with the sword. She can't just hand it off to somebody else.
Not in the same way that the Mandalorian TV series explained it, winning it in battle, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think they made a big point of that at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely a lot of parallels to how Sabine has to deal with the Darksaber, like Mando did, right? So I mean, he's got this. They both have the Darksaber, but they have to figure out what to do with it because they don't want to bear the weight of the responsibility of leading their people.
Yeah. She'd heard that little 2D bedtime story before, so she knows how, it was a Mandalorian Jedi had it, and then whoever has this is the leader, and she obviously doesn't want that responsibility right now. But now they're having this little intervention. Basically, everyone's kind of teaming up against her.
Yeah.
Hey.
Everyone's telling her, "Here, take the sword. It's yours. It's it's your responsibility at this point." And she doesn't want it. But it's really killing me, this whole meta thing of us discussing it, and then the weird subtitles that I burned into this to watch it with it is also doing a commentary on the episode. So you've got the episode, the text commentary, and then our commentary. It's a very weird meta thing.
Blowing your mind.
Just don't look at the bottom. Just
ignore the man behind the curtain.
Look at their eyes.
Which is, it's hard not to. That's one of the things I love about this animation style is that's how expressive the faces are.
Yeah.
And how you get so much emotion out of these cartoon characters.
Yeah. And a lot of weight that's put on the decisions that they make, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always feel so life and death with everything that they do.
And so story-wise, what's happening here is Kanan saying, well, if she's going to be wielding this, she has to be trained. So they're going out to kind of the same training grounds that he'd been training Ezra at and using lightsaber, because we don't want people waving things that can cut things in half in the middle of a ship. So
sure.
So we got to see a little spider there. Is that a familiar spider?
It's it looks similar, but it has a different name.
Yeah.
It is Krykna, and those little like little crab snail things, those are called Dakma.
Yeah,
so,
doesn't matter. It freaks me out.
It sounds like you're making it all up, Dale.
It would be, but the Dakma, they were referenced in some book, and apparently they can drink a surprisingly large amount of milk. I don't know where they would get the milk or why that would be mentioned.
What color milk it is?
I guess that's a useful skill.
Right.
So we're starting here with obviously wooden sabers, training. I think she would never do with a lightsaber there. Kind of behind her.
Right.
Good point.
Well, safety first.
But yeah, starting with some kind of basic saber training on how to be wielding a weapon like that.
See, that's not fair. He uses the Force against her. Come on.
Right away, too. What a jerk.
Right.
But a Mandalorian should always be trained to adapt to any situation. They're kind of the Marines of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Well, then,
but still, he's kind of a dick.
I don't know how much you guys talked about this when looking at previous episodes, but Kanan was just a Padawan when everything came down, so he doesn't really know what he's doing.
True, to an extent, yeah. He's still figuring it out. He never became a knight or a master officially, so.
Right. Yeah, he's still in the process of training Ezra, really,
but
he doesn't have like the finesse, how to train someone that's not a Force user, basically.
Yeah. Well, and you've got this whole era here where, because the Jedi and the Jedi Masters and the Jedi Order have been wiped out, you've got people, Padawans training Padawans, essentially. Like, he never really fully progressed past the Padawan. So you've got neophytes training neophytes for a whole generation or two.
Mm-hmm.
And having to do it in secret and not being able to be open about it. Although, for not being able to be open about it, we seem to be getting a lot of Jedi action in Rebels during a period where a Jedi would get executed on sight. So,
I
think if you could do all the things they can do, you'd have a hard time keeping it a secret.
Yeah. Even though, Kanan didn't become a master and get his degree, his MBA or whatever, in being a Jedi, he still feels that responsibility of training anyone when it comes to a saber, I guess.
Yep.
All I know is I want more like lightsaber training montage set to Eye of the Tiger. That's
that would be good.
He got his LST degree, his lightsaber training degree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
I mean,
go ahead.
He might be totally unqualified to do this job.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the relationship between Ezra and Sabine? The sibling rivalry with him being like the annoying little brother.
I would say it's definitely sibling as a relationship.
So
I like it. I like how it.
Is that what you're saying? Okay. Fine.
Sorry, one of you, Jonathan Jefferson, pick one.
Go ahead.
I like how the relationship between the two kind of grows over the course of the series. He starts out basically wanting a date, but then they grow into being friends and having this kind of sibling relationship too. So it's nice to see it develop over time, I guess, which is nice it's something you can do in a series that you can't do in an individual movie.
Yeah, and we know spoilers for the end of the series, but we know, at the end she's just as committed to finding Ezra. So
that's true.
I mean, the show never really tried to like ship them together, for better or for worse. Like Rebels was never one of the goals of the show. It seemed like to create relationships. They wanted to create like brother sister relationships, or master Padawan, or maybe a little bit in like Hera and Kanan, but it just was never, what you typically would see in sitcoms or even in dramas.
Sure,
it's not the Star Wars way.
Romance is pretty uncommon in the Star Wars universe. We don't see it very often.
We see toxic ones with Padme and Anakin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and then you
very rarely see good examples.
And then you find out she's your sister anyway. Yeah.
Right. So he shows up. Fen Rao shows up with these little gauntlets to give her, and I'm assuming she read like a quick start guide off screen real quickly.
YouTube video. Yep.
Right. She immediately, of course, knows how to use the weapons intimately and effectively. Yep. That's definitely a trope. Yeah.
but not a wooden stick to fight. Yeah.
Usually a superhero trope. A superhero acquires their powers and instantly knows how to defeat bad guys with it.
But they're cool little gadgets. This predates Mandalorian by a couple years, so we hadn't seen the whistling birds yet. But those little gauntlets, they do a lot. There's a repulsor, there's shields in there. They do all kind of things.
Yeah.
It's there to kind of even the battle a little bit, right? So
right.
She's got force, she needs to have
exactly. Yeah, it's kind of counterbalance with Mandalorian gadgetry, be able to fight a force wielder, which we know is an ancient and long-standing conflict there is Jedi and Mandalorian, which of course is the issue here of a Jedi training a Mandalorian and how to use a lightsaber.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Kanan acting like this because he completely talks down, does like a class thing here. Like, hey, I'm a Jedi. I know the way. You don't know the way. Even though Mandalorians, they have their own way, which
this is the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can kind of tell he's getting frustrated because she's not a Jedi and he doesn't know how to train her.
Right. Yeah. He doesn't even know kind of how what the curriculum even looks like for what he's training her to do. It's training her in the use of a lightsaber and in the use of saber fighting and he's never done that with a non-Jedi.
But this is also a trope in like these types of shows, right? Where you're learning and then things go poorly and then you have a conversation, you go back, try again, and things go better.
Oh, right? You mean it might be kind of cathartic?
Good callback.
Very good.
I see what you did there.
So this scene here, actually, they play Sabine's theme with the violins. It sounds really cool. Yeah. If you have the audio.
Yeah.
So you guys talk to me about Sabine here. Like, what do you think about her as a character in the show of Rebels? And her character arc overall.
I really feel like I'm still learning since I haven't actually, of anyone here, I've not watched all the way through Rebels consecutively. And I really think I need to. I think this kind of jumping around, I really need, I think, to watch from beginning to end to really get her character arc, to really understand her. And I think I should definitely do that prior to her appearing in live action, played by Elizabeth Winstead in about 3 months. So,
yeah.
Winstead's playing Hera, not Sabine.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm sorry. My bad.
I like, I think Sabine and Ezra are great characters, and I like how much they get to grow over the course of the series because they both start as just kind of cocky teenagers.
Yep.
And then by the end, the end is that they both accept responsibility, whatever that responsibility happens to be, but they both take on a responsibility. So you kind of see them get to grow into the kind of person that's going to do that, which I think it's nice that you don't see. I mean, I guess you see a fair amount of character development across Star Wars, but that's a particularly great example of characters that are very different at the end of their story than they were at the beginning of their story.
There's definitely a journey. Yeah. We just got a brief glimpse of the Bendu there. Did not actually speak, so no voice of the character there, but just a little bit of them just turning and kind of looking at Sabine walking away.
Yeah. Well, he's wondering what the heck he did. Like, she kicked him, Come on. Don't bring me into this, he's thinking.
Yep. And then mom and dad are fighting about how to train
Here's
the
Hera
daughter.
chewing him out.
Yep. Mom and dad are fighting again.
Well, she's like, you're being too harsh. He's like, what, me? She's like, yeah, you're kind of being a dick. Chill,
Yeah.
man.
She is not a Jedi.
She's writing dialogue for this.
Yeah. Yeah, because Hera's definitely become a mom to everyone there.
That's good. I think somebody has to. I mean, this is a rowdy bunch when they first kind of get together. I mean, they need somebody who's got a softer touch than maybe Hannibal does in A-Team to be able to like bring. We had to do an A-Team reference to like bring them together and work together as a team, play to all their strengths, and help them to grow.
That's not a moon.
Yeah, but as we see in this scene, Mother knows best. Like, he adjusts his approach, and it works.
This is a neat little scene. These are two characters that you don't imagine having a whole lot to say to each other.
Yeah, it's true because I don't know that they've interacted a lot up until this point.
So, are they drinking something alcoholic or non-alcoholic here?
It's spider milk.
I don't know what's the drinking age in the Star Wars universe.
Right. Well, in a time of war, when you're leading a ragtag fleet of rebels,
Sure.
Right. I don't know. I could go back to like the episode 2 bar, right, where what's her face, the changeling, she gets her arm cut off. Is everybody in there over 18? I don't know.
Right.
Yep. So the attempted apologies here, and finding some sort of common ground on how to train. It's like, okay, I will try harder. Okay, I'll try not to be as much of a douche.
Right.
It's a really interesting episode because I mean this is all character. There's no villain in this episode. There's not. The only fighting even is the practice and then the yelling at each other. But so this is all just character stuff. It's
the villain is fear and points of view.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean it's the classic conflicts are man versus man versus nature, man versus self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in this one, Sabine is really, I mean, the initial person versus person, however you want to phrase it, but
Sure.
It's like she's really having to come to terms and battle herself, where she's been, where she needs to go. There's this barrier that she's trying to get through, and Kanan's not helping, but Ezra does. And it's like, okay, now, after you've done this kind of character development and learned about each other some more, Kanan's learned about himself, Sabine's learned about himself. Now we get to the scene where they can actually fight, not with wood and swords here, but with lightsaber versus darksaber.
Yep. Everyone's had their cathartic moments.
Yep.
No tears.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's great how we're able to get so much story, and there's just these 5, like maybe a handful of characters.
Yeah, very small
in the
cast
setting.
in the episode.
And no villains, which Clone Wars never had an episode like that. Every episode of Clone Wars, had the bad guys at some point during the 22 minutes.
That's a big thing, big difference between Clone Wars and Rebels, right? Rebels is willing to go more philosophical.
Yeah, much
long-term
deeper.
character
Yeah, much
development.
more character development. Yeah, really kind of deep end.
Yeah, it benefits from them all being new characters. They're not most of the characters in Clone Wars were is taken from the films, and you could argue that the only character that has a really good arc in Clone Wars is Ahsoka, who's really the only
He's an original
character.
Yep.
So they could do whatever they wanted with her, but they couldn't really do anything with Anakin or Obi-Wan because they have to be the way they are when we see them.
That's true. Yeah, these characters
Sith.
don't have a destination other than within this show. These characters don't have to end up at a specific point other than episode 4, which none of them appear in. So
Right.
And this episode was written by Dave Filoni, so I feel like he really got the story he wanted to tell without anyone else getting in the way of it.
So tell me about, if you guys know, why was the Darksaber so hard for the Mandalorian to handle for Din Djarin? Because he's like swinging it around like it's heavy or bulky or something. But here it just seems like something easy to be able to wield, right?
he didn't have a Jedi to train him.
At first, Jonathan, it was heavy for her, but it took a minute. Same with when we saw Bo-Katan,
Bo-Katan.
using it, it was easy for her to use right away compared to Din, who really struggled with it at first.
Well,
and probably part of it is not fighting it. The whole thing with both Din and with Sabine here, we see is that they're fighting the weapon. They don't want the weight of this responsibility. They don't want to be the wielder of this weapon. Whereas, Bo-Katan kind of lived for it. I mean, she was living for that moment when she could have the sword and when she could lead her people.
Mm-hmm.
She was completely leaning into it. They were fighting against it.
mm-hmm.
I like that as a story element, though, that the weight of it versus just a lightsaber is light for anyone to pick up.
It's the weight of responsibility is what you're saying.
Right.
It's a metaphorical weight.
Correct.
It shows up as a physical weight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not necessarily a subtle metaphor, but in effect,
Right.
Right.
Star Wars is not known for subtle metaphors.
No, it's not.
But now she's getting it.
Yes. So yes, the real subtitles would be great for us here.
I know that's what exactly.
Absolutely watch this
Not
episode.
having the real subtitles is really hobbling a little bit here.
Great delivery again from Tia Sircar in this scene, because she's just, she was all bottled up. We didn't know what her conflicts were, what she was struggling with. Why wouldn't you want to be the leader and take this weapon?
Right.
Well, there's a much bigger story when it's her family and the Empire, and then being rejected again. So it's a big deal that even this blind guy she's fighting can see it. So
nice, good touch base there. Yeah, even the blind guy can see it.
It's a pretty obvious metaphor. Thank you again.
There are none so blind as those who will not see. I don't remember what that was from, but.
So this is good. I mean, you see like a deepening of, the friendship, and both of them grew throughout this episode. Mm-hmm. She's having to deal with her past, and what does that mean for her future? Kanan, he grows a little bit, hopefully grows a little bit, knowing that he kind of sucks sometime as a master, and when it comes to training others, and hopefully he'll do a little best. And, we see here, thanks to everything that she's learned,
yep.
Her family supports her and, the decisions she has to make.
Everyone's saying that they will bow down, that they respect her and they respect, the potential she has for leadership. Even if she doesn't see it, they see it in her.
Yep. They're forming the fellowship of the Darksaber. This guy's bringing his bow and his axe.
And my axe and
his staple gun. So
I like the staple gun. I thought that was a great little thing.
So she has to go throw the Darksaber into the Mount of Doom. Is that what you're trying to say?
So let's not ignore the most important thing. The Darksaber is freaking cool. I mean, it is. It, as a weapon, as a visual, it's just freaking cool.
Yeah. It's glowing black, crackling with energy. That's pretty awesome. And it can stand up to a lightsaber. Like, how many things could ever do that back in the old days?
We don't see many in the course of all the shows.
That's true. It's a weapon that could very easily look too overpowering, and so they have to come up with something else. And the Darksaber works.
It would have been easy for them to just make it look like a black lightsaber, and it really doesn't. They did.
Yeah, it's definitely a distinctly different weapon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the hilt with the flatness to the blade part of the hilt.
Right. You always imagine the regular lightsabers as being kind of a pointy tube. And this one definitely seems like a slashing sword.
It is a saber,
sword. Yeah, it's like a katana. There's a definite wide side to it and a short side. Yeah.
But it's also not just the physical thing too. It's a lot of what it represents. It represents leadership, represents destiny. It represents, being the person who can help out this culture and this people. And like, there's not many of those types of things in the Star Wars universe that have that much weight to them. A lot of times, they'll talk about the Force, and it's between things. It's an energy field. It's not a physical thing that you're holding. So, I think this is a good addition to kind of broaden that perspective in the Star Wars universe, right? You have something that is a physical item that can help you lead a people and help them to reach a catharsis as a culture and try to band together and move forward when they're all fractured before. That's an interesting concept to introduce in this galaxy that seems to be more about familial relationships and about just this kind of Zen feeling that you have, that you embody in the Force, and try to do good. And so it's very like Star Wars versus Game of Thrones element here that they've introduced.
Yeah, when this episode first aired, it really didn't sink in with me at the time that this was Sabine's character arc. She wasn't just going to be the munitions expert that everything came so easy to her. She was really struggling with some things, and we'll get into it even more next week. But as far as like a non-Force user picking up a lightsaber or any kind of saber and learning how to use it right away, I think this was a really good peek at what that looks like in the Star Wars universe.
Mm-hmm. And it was this episode was neat that it did a lot with just a few characters, just it was basically 4 characters in one setting for the whole story. Yeah. So had it been live action, this would have been one of the low budget filler episodes that they like to do with just the regular cast and as few sets as possible. They didn't have to do that in an animated show. So we kind of get to see what the dramatic use of a story like that is. It's not just a cost-cutting measure. It's also useful for drama.
Sure. That's a benefit of having a 22 or 24, whatever it is, episode season, is that you're not cramming everything into just 8 short stories.
Mm-hmm. They can slow down and take their time a little bit.
And they can plant seeds, right? So like I kind of wonder, when Filoni was creating this Darksaber, like did he have like some sort of farther game in mind of something like Mandalorian and, whatever's going to happen after that. We haven't seen Ahsoka yet, or whatever the Filoniverse movie is going to be. But like, I mean, this is the seed, and some of these characters were the beginnings of what we see now in Star Wars shows on Disney Plus.
It is a good question of that I hadn't thought before is how much do we think Filoni was actually laying out a plan? How much world building was he doing? I mean, how much between Clone Wars and Rebels was a grand master plan, like the way Lucas had kind of had the 3 trilogies planned out in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Did Dave Filoni have that? Did he have a place he wanted to get to, or was he just kind of telling stories and coming up with stuff, because I know Jon Favreau obviously brought a lot of his own stuff into it once it became The Mandalorian. So, I mean, how much is Dave Filoni an architect or just a really passionate Star Wars fan who is really good at creating stuff? Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that he had a master plan, but I do think he probably went, I could tell more stories about this.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he had like a 10-year plan with everything mapped out.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it was
I'm
just
sure he was
cool
thinking
stuff, but
we can keep coming back to this if we want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the whiteboard of all these Star Wars elements, it's like, okay, here's a good one that we could really make into something larger and have lots of stories. This could be the catalyst for more stories to come.
Mm-hmm.
in terms of
about it,
things like the MCU, where they definitely have stuff charted out like 20 movies in advance and 10 years in advance. I don't think Filoni's doing that.
No, I don't think anybody at the Star Wars office is doing that.
Yeah. If anyone is,
this isn't the Mind Gem or the Infinity Stone or anything. If you think about it, though, there's a solid decade from the time this weapon shows up in Clone Wars before it comes back in Mandalorian, but the story of Clone Wars is not the story of the history of Mandalore. Yes, it was added in there, the same as this series. This series is about rebellion against the Empire. The Seeds of Rebellion. It's not the Mandalore story, but the way they can bring it in and say, hey, we can fit that in here. We can fit that in this story. And then finally we get that payoff come 2019 when it shows up in Moff Gideon's hands. That's pretty neat.
It's not just neat. It's also catharsis.
It is.
All right. Any final thoughts, guys?
Yeah. Don't overkill a metaphor. Yeah.
Right.
Slash that middle in half with the Darksaber.
So before I talk about next week, we'll plug a few things here. You can join us on Facebook pretty much every Tuesday evening, Facebook, Rocky Mountain Fan Force, and see this live stream with the episode intact. Usually there's some subtitles, but at least, hey, you're getting the real video.
Usually the subtitles are appropriate to the actual dialogue that we're supposed to be following.
Yes. Also find us on your podcatcher of choice at Binging the Force. You can buy our merch at bingingtheforce.myspreadshop.com. And finally, we're at Binging the Force on YouTube. Next week, we get to see Sabine a little more. Rebels Season 3, Episode 16, Legacy of Mandalore. Cannot wait. So,
Thanks,
anything
everyone.
else, guys?
Thanks, Jefferson, for coming all the way from Portland.
Sure, yeah, I had a great time.
Strangely,
Awesome.
the bits traveled the same distance. Yeah.
They do, yeah. They don't seem to care how far it is.
Yeah. Actually, you're not our only West Coaster since we've had Corey join several times from LA. So
That's true.
well, thanks, everyone.
Cover all time zones. All right. Have a good night. Take care.
Bye.